September 22nd, 1979. In the remote waters off the coast of South Africa, an aging American Vela satellite detects something strange. A bright double flash erupts near the Prince Edward Islands, a barren and largely uninhabited territory deep in the southern Indian Ocean. The satellite has seen this signature before, 14 times to be exact, all of which were confirmed nuclear detonations. But this time there's a problem. No nation has announced a test. Within hours, intelligence agencies scramble, military aircraft take to the skies, and a quiet but urgent investigation begins. Was this a covert nuclear test? And if so, who was responsible? The detection came from an American surveillance satellite, Vela Ops 6911. Vela, a 12-satellite series, is specifically designed to monitor nuclear detonations. The first generation of these was introduced in 1963, however a more advanced version was launched in 1967. The sensor array can detect gamma rays, X-rays, and neutron radiation. Specifically on board are two non-imaging silicon photodiode sensors called Vang meters. These monitor light levels over sub-millisecond intervals and can determine the location of a nuclear explosion within 3,000 miles. A nuclear detonation has a very specific signature which comes in the form of a double flash. In the first milliseconds of an explosion, a short bright flash emanates from the center of the reaction. In an instant, a shockwave of ionized gas blocks the bright light from the fireball. This shockwave expands rapidly and cools, once again revealing the bright center of the blast. When this signal is drawn on a graph using logarithmic scales on both axes, two comparable humps can be seen. This gives the detection the name of a double hump. By that date, Vela satellites had detected the distinct double hump 41 times, each being a confirmed nuclear test, giving the system a 100% success rate so far. Just after midnight, waves are crashing deep in the southern Indian Ocean. On the other side of the world, in Patrick's Air Force Base, Florida, early warning systems light up and alarms are raised. Reports of an estimated 3 kiloton nuclear blast flood the reporting systems. The US security apparatus goes into immediate panic, and the double flash is confirmed between the Cortez and Prince Edward Islands. The base issues an immediate alert. President Jimmy Carter calls a meeting in the White House Situation Room where top military professionals pore over the sensor data. A classified investigation begins, and US aircraft are scrambled to the area. Over 25 sorties are flown to carry out atmospheric testing, while various US intelligence agencies begin their investigation on the ground. A short while later, at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, an unusual ionospheric wave is detected. The wave moves from southeast to northwest, a potential indication that the explosion was distant and real. Soon after the event, low levels of iodine-131, a byproduct of nuclear fission, are found in sheep in the Australian states of Victoria and Tasmania. Below the surface, a different picture was taking shape. It's the time of the Cold War. The US has deployed state-of-the-art acoustic monitoring systems to track Soviet submarines. These are known as the Sound Surveillance System, or SOSUS, and the Missile Impact Location System, MILS. These hydrophones are located at key underwater locations around the world. At Ascension Island, the MILS system detects an unusual signal, one that aligns with the time and date of the reported Vela flash. The morning after the incident, US President Jimmy Carter writes in his diary, "There was an indication of a nuclear explosion in the region of South Africa. Either South Africa, Israel using a ship at sea, or nothing." The Cold War had seen a surge in the creation of numerous non-proliferation treaties and policies. The Partial Test Ban Treaty, or PTBT, was signed in 1963, while the Non-Proliferation Treaty, or NPT, was signed in 1968. The Vela incident was a blatant violation of both. Previous violations were made by the Soviets in 1965, when they conducted the Chang'an tests in Kazakhstan. While the exact details were top secret at the time, South Africa was running an extensive nuclear arms program. The country was also in a trade agreement with Israel. They supplied them with yellow cake uranium in 1961 in return for tritium, another vital ingredient in the development of nuclear weapons. In 1977, a Soviet intelligence satellite spots something strange in the desert of South Africa. In an isolated location north of Uppington, in the remote Kalahari Desert, a facility is under construction. The Soviets inform the Americans, who immediately send an SR-71 spy plane to investigate. As it reaches the Kalahari Desert, the reconnaissance cameras capture something alarming. Structures emerging from the barren landscape. Most notable are two deep shafts, one measuring 385 metres and the other 216 metres, likely intended for underground nuclear tests. On August 28th, the Washington Post quotes a US official. "We were 99% certain that the construction was a preparation for an atomic test." Following this revelation, international pressure on South Africa escalated rapidly. Facing diplomatic isolation and the threat of economic sanctions, the country was forced to dismantle the facility. It was later reported that by 1979, South Africa was not yet capable of conducting an independent nuclear test. Israel's nuclear program, however, was far more advanced, though it had never officially tested a weapon. According to the CIA, by the late 70s, it was estimated that Israel had about 500 tons of uranium and an estimated 10 to 20 nuclear weapons. As speculation mounted, Stanford University researcher Leonard Weiss, an expert on international security and weapons, stated, "The weight of the evidence that the Vela event was an Israeli nuclear test, assisted by South Africa, appears overwhelming." For President Jimmy Carter, the Vela Incident posed a serious crisis. Non-proliferation and disarmament were pillars of his presidency, and with re-election looming in 1980, the stakes were high. A covert test, if confirmed, would undermine US credibility, raising doubts in its ability to detect Soviet treaty violations. Worse, it could derail the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty, or SALT II treaty, signed in June 1979 but still awaiting Senate ratification. The SALT II treaty was a 1979 agreement between the US and the Soviet Union, aimed at limiting the number of strategic nuclear weapons each side could deploy. With all this pressure, the State Department was in crisis. If the test was real, it could expose an undeclared Israeli nuclear program, complicating US relations in the Middle East. The Carter administration took a two-pronged approach, publicly downplaying the event while privately acknowledging its significance. This strategy was driven by the diplomatic and political stakes. If a nuclear test by a friendly or allied nation were acknowledged, US law, specifically the Glenn Amendment, would mandate cutoffs in aid and impose sanctions for the offending country. A White House science panel was set up. Upon reviewing the data, they attributed the double flash to a possible micrometeorite impact or another natural anomaly, an explanation that avoided political fallout. And over time, the Vela incident faded from public attention. As the Cold War tensions in South Africa escalated, the country's priorities shifted, driven by geopolitical fears of a domino effect of communism. Represented by Cuban forces aiding Marxist movements in Angola, South Africa's then president Frederick Wilhelm de Klerk ended his country's nuclear weapons program in 1989. In 1991, South Africa formally joined the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and in 1996, it signed the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Israel's position regarding nuclear weapons was and is a lot more opaque. In 1986, Israeli nuclear technician Mardouche Vanunu made a shocking revelation. Speaking to the Sunday Times of London, he confirmed Israel had been a major nuclear power since the late 1970s. Vanunu provided photographic evidence showing that Israel had developed thermonuclear weapons with an estimated stockpile of 100 units. Israel reacted swiftly. Vanunu was lured to Rome in a Mossad honey trap, abducted, drugged, and smuggled back to the country. He was tried in secret, sentenced to 18 years in prison, of which he spent 10 in solitary confinement. In 1997, an Israeli newspaper quoted South African Deputy Foreign Minister Aziz Pahad, who said the double flash detected in September 1979 was indeed a South African nuclear test, with assistance from Israel. Pahad went further, claiming that Israel had provided nuclear expertise in exchange for 550 tons of South African uranium. But almost as soon as the statement was made, he retracted it. Whether he had spoken out of turn or under pressure remains unclear. Today, nestled in the quiet hills of Pretoria, lies the 118-acre Pelindaba complex, which was once the heart of South Africa's nuclear weapons program. It housed key facilities, including the Y Plant uranium enrichment facility and the Safari 1 research reactor, which played a significant role in the country's nuclear development. While the country officially dismantled its nuclear arsenal in the early 1990s, concerns about its nuclear materials remain to this day. In November 2007, 4 armed men breached Pelindaba's security, bypassing multiple layers of protection. Once inside, they moved freely within the facility for 45 minutes. During the invasion, Officer Anton Gerber spotted the attackers and raised the alarm. As a consequence, he was shot and wounded in the process. At the same time, a second group attempted to break in from the west of the facility, suggesting a coordinated attack was taking place. The South African government dismissed the incident as a failed burglary, but a former US intelligence official later described the severity of the situation. They had the run of the place. The more we learned, the more horrifying it was. They could have gotten the stuff. The break-in raised serious concerns about whether South Africa's nuclear materials were fully secured, and whether a potential black market nuclear threat had just been narrowly avoided. The United States never officially acknowledged the Vela incident as a nuclear test. President Jimmy Carter, despite his initial suspicions about Israel and South Africa, never pursued the matter publicly. Key evidence, including the Naval Research Laboratory's report of 1980, was largely ignored. This report disputed the sensor malfunction conclusion, instead finding evidence of a low-yield nuclear explosion. The Soviet Union, though aware of the event, remained relatively quiet. Leonid Brezhnev criticised Western nuclear hypocrisy, but chose not to escalate tensions during the ongoing SALT II negotiations. Israel's nuclear stance remained opaque. Its arsenal was known but never publicly acknowledged. In 1968, the US pressured Israel to sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty, but Israel refused. Many experts, including Leonard Weiss, later argued that the Vela 6911 satellite correctly recorded a nuclear detonation, but publicly naming who was responsible would have caused a serious political crisis for the US. By downplaying the satellite data and promoting alternative explanations, the Carter administration contained the situation. As a result, the world may never know for certain what caused the mysterious double flash on the night of September 22nd, 1979.